Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another review, and it's another episode a second time around. This is a film I haven't seen since its theatrical run, and I've actually been meaning to watch it. I know it was on Netflix for a while, but I thought it was taken off, but I guess it was because of how many Netflix films we'd watched on there, so it was no longer shown instantly under, films you might be interested in. So I typed it in, I saw it was still on there, so I'm like, I might as well give it a watch. Been meaning to rewatch it. Granted, it's been a couple weeks since I've watched it again, but life gets in the way of me recording some stuff sometimes, and I still remember everything about it, so I can do this video. As you can tell up there, it is the 2011/2012. I'm guessing it came out early 2012. Yeah, early 2012. It was released in Austin in 11. Film The Grey, starring Liam Neeson and directed by Joe Carnahan. Now, like a lot of you, I remember seeing these trailers and being a little slightly hyped for the film. And of course, being like, when the ending came, like, that was it. And I have to say, after rewatching it, the ending is still my main criticism with the film, which I will address again later on. But other than that, I thought the film, up until the end, was well paced. But I will say this, it has a 6.8 on IMDb. For that scale, that is a little too high. If it had a better ending, maybe I could agree with that, but I'd say for what I think the film probably should be more at the 5.5 scale. Considering how weird the scale is on IMDb, that would be a little bit more fitting. Rotten Tomatoes, 61 with the audience, a little bit lower, but I could see. 79 with the critics, a little bit, I think it would be lower, but I could sort of understand that. Though, looking over at the top rentals more recently, that's a higher score than Thor the Dark World. That's a higher score than The Hobbit. That's a higher score than The Wolf of Wall Street. That's the same score as Saving Mr. Banks, for God's sakes. No. I think Smog would eat film. But anyway, the film was made on $25 million, which I could say, this is one of those films I could see that money up on the screen. And it made over $77 million, which, even though I don't like the ending, I could say, yeah, I'm glad it made it. At least it will get Liam Neeson more work from now on. Now, this is not the first film Carnahan made. Before this, he directed films like Blood, Guts, Bullets, and Octane, Narc, Smoking Aces, and The A-Team, which I've never seen any of those. I haven't even seen the A-Team show, so that explains why I never watched the film. And this year he has a film called Stretch coming out. Hopefully it has a better ending than this film, but Liam Neeson's the only actor I'm really going to go into a lot of detail on, because the rest of them I don't recognize. We got Dermot Mulroney, Frank Grillo, Dallas Roberts, Joe Anderson, Nonso Anazi, and James Badge Dale, among others. For how their characters are written, they do pretty good jobs. It's just that there's not really a lot to look at them for, and I guess this is why I make the connection with this film. This is kind of like a slasher film, what I mean by that is, think about it. You got a group of people all being stalked and killed off one by one, and then you're left with a sole survivor. Usually it's one or two survivors, but in this case it's the sole survivor. In this case, instead of a deranged maniac stalking the people, we have a pack of wolves. And of course, like some slasher movies, the characters, some of them you're like, okay, you can get the charm from the actors, but some of the characters you're like, okay, I really hate that guy. It's kind of like that, but it's basically like a highbrow slasher film. Which, me making that connection really makes the ending a little bit more of a letdown, because in a slasher film, you really want the protagonist, if you like the protagonist, to survive. And even though this is probably Liam Neeson's not his best protagonist he's played in a film, you could sort of identify with the guy, because you're wondering, okay, why is he about to commit suicide and all that? Then at the end you find out about his wife. You're like, okay, that's kind of sad. I could sort of see why he'd do that. I probably wouldn't commit suicide in the same situation, but you can understand why he probably would. And you can probably also understand why at that point, after everything that's going on, he's about to give up. But I'll get a little bit more of that in a little bit. The rest of the characters, you understand their motivations a little bit. Like the one dickhead guy. You can understand why he's getting into a little minor argument with Liam Neeson, because he's like, who died and made you the leader? And all that. But, and especially in a situation like this. But if he's the guy who actually understands wolves and you're being stalked by wolves, I think you should probably defer to the guy's knowledge when it comes to wolves. And of course, the reaction when they actually kill one of the wolves, that was actually kind of funny. Cutting the head off a wolf. Which brings me to the controversy surrounding this film. Apparently they actually used real wolf bodies in this film, 2 for props and 2 for the cast to eat. And of course this angered groups like PETA, even though gray wolves are no longer on the endangered species list. I guess they figured it would encourage people to go out and shoot them and put them back on the list. I can understand that, but they need to understand this is a fictional story. Granted, I don't think wolves would probably act like that because of their experience with humans and humans having guns, but if you think about it, in Alaska, one of the few wildernesses left, especially in the United States, I think if humans were dropped into a situation like this and it became evident that they didn't have guns and they were in their territory, I think the wolves probably would act territorial. Maybe not as aggressive as they are in the film, but probably aggressive. I mean, I've seen my own dogs act slightly territorial, but not to this extent, obviously. Especially considering that the humans are by default the alpha to them, but that's getting a little bit off topic. And anyway, I think PETA complains about a little too much stuff anyway. They complained about the Tanuki outfit in the Super Mario Brothers games 20 years after they freaking were in there. Now, the film I thought was shot pretty well. At times the camera does shake a little bit, but this isn't an action film. It's a survival film, so it doesn't bother me. And it kind of does have a little bit of a documentary feel with that. The scenes that are flashbacks or memories, those are shot in a way that you could tell they're flashbacks or memories. The lighting is right, and they're shot with the right type of lens, so it sets the mood of the scene. I do like the tagline for the film, "Live or Die on this day," but that should have been the first hint of what the ending was probably going to be. I do like the poem that's said throughout the film by Liam Neeson's character that his character's father wrote, but I don't remember it, but I remember it. The last 2 lines, "I live or die," I guess explains the tagline. Now, I guess I probably should address the ending now because there's nothing really other than that I can address, and that is the fact that it's one of those fade to black endings. Now, I don't mind those endings if they are done right. What I mean by that is done in the right way. Like 2 other movies that did similar endings that come to mind are my favorite film of 2013, Prisoners, and The Wrestler. Now, The Wrestler does it with, you could tell that the Ram's heart is, something's going wrong with it, but he's getting on the top rope to do his finishing maneuver, and then he goes to do it, and then it fades to black. That I don't mind, though you probably could have done a more conclusive ending, like have him do the pin, and then right at the 3 count, have it fade to black. That might have been a little bit better. But I don't mind it doing that for one reason, and that is it gives the audience the opportunity to decide whether or not he lived or not. I personally view it as he lived, but someone else might say, he died. It's just, oh, that reminds me of another one. Halloween 3. You don't know if they managed to turn it off. I think they turned it off, but then someone say, "You're an optimist, aren't you?" Yeah. I think they turned it off. That's another good one. Now back to Prisoners. That one kind of resolved almost everything with the plot except what would happen to the one guy. And of course, there's going to be a minor spoiler for those of you who haven't seen the film, so you might want to skip ahead a little bit or for that. But anyway, the guy, Hugh Jackman's character is going to be going to jail for a little bit for what he did to the one mentally disturbed character, especially considering we find out he was a kidnapped victim himself. Now, at the end, of course, when Gyllenhaal's character goes to the area the woman lived at, he hears the noise from Hugh Jackman down in the cell, and then when he realizes, he's like, wait a minute, that noise, it fades to black and the movie ends. So you're left to think, okay, he hears it, so he's probably going to get Jackman out of the cell, take him for medical attention, and then maybe Jackman will go to jail or not. It's probably up to the discretion of the DEA. Now that's one that's like, okay, everything's resolved, it's powerful. This thing, almost everything is resolved. Almost. Because we see that Neeson's character, John Ottway, you see at first he's going to give up, then when he sees the wolves and he's thinking about his wife, he gets the will to live at least for a little bit longer, and he goes to attack the wolf, which we see in the trailer, which is like, why put that scene in the trailer and make it seem like it's more of an action-oriented film at times, when other than Run from the Wolves it's not, and then disappoint them by showing them basically the ending of the movie. Bullshit. But what they could have done better is that actually show him charge, have him do a little bit of a fight with the wolf, kill the alpha wolf, maybe collapse on top of it for a brief second and sit up and look and see that the other wolves are walking away, because I mean they just killed their alpha in fair combat, so it's not like they're going to do that, so they're maybe like, okay, this is his territory now, we're out of here. and then have him just sit there like, you know, breathing heavily, because I mean he just fought a freaking wolf. I mean, even if he only got bit once or twice, it's probably gonna take a little bit out of you, especially considering what we've seen him do throughout the rest of the movie. Have him sit there and then like mulling over, like maybe like a point of view shot where his vision is going blurry. Now all of a sudden he's like thinks he hears something, and he's like, at first he's like, nah, that's nothing. Then as it gets louder, he starts to focus more. He's like, wait a minute. It doesn't say it, but you can tell basically from the facial features that he's like that. And all of a sudden you realize it's a helicopter. And then maybe have him, maybe not see the helicopter, hear it get louder, and then maybe have him start to stand up and then fade to black. Because then you would actually be leaving it on a good note. You're like, okay, he has a will to live, he hears what could be his rescue, but then it's up to the audience to decide whether or not he got to the helicopter or it went past him and he dies. That'd be a little bit stronger. Personally, if they did that, I would think he would survive, especially because we want, more so because we want the character to live, and also because I'm the one that's coming up with this ending, so I can decide it. But think about it. Wouldn't that have been a vastly better ending? I mean, I know Carnahan had a hand in the script. Him and Ian Mackenzie Jeffers wrote it based on Ian's story, but I could tell you if I was Carnahan, I would have changed the ending to make it a little bit more like that, like what I just said. That would have been a vastly better ending and more in line with how a fade to black ending should be. As it is, it's basically just leaving it on an end note. And then, of course, you have the I think it's, I forget if it's a mid or after credit sequence where you see John on top of the Alpha Wolf, both breathing heavily. You could tell they probably had a bad fight, and it looks like they both could die. It's like, really? Then you make it a survival film where no one survives. This isn't a freaking found footage film where everyone dies. I mean, that's the one thing that is getting a little bit boring about the found footage genre, is that everyone dies. If you're going to do a survival film where no one survives, then what's the point of doing the film in the first place? Why don't you just do it as a found footage movie? Granted, it'd be more of a stereotype thing, but then at least we would know that everyone's going to die. Granted, actually, this film was a found footage film, would have been interesting, you know, just as a concept, but you didn't really need to do it. But makes me wonder how this film would have looked as a found footage film, but just as a curiosity, not like it needed to be that. But anyway, because of the ending, which this is one of those endings that basically kind of does ruin the rest of the film for me. I still enjoy the film, and I could probably still rewatch the film, but it's not like one I would go, you know what? Nothing else. You know what? Ah, the Gray, I'll watch it. Maybe I might do that, but it's one of those films I'd have to be in the mood to watch, and then probably as soon when it's about to get to the ending, right before it fades back, pause, turn off. My rating for the film, based on what I do like about it, you know, the characters, the fact it kind of has that slasher movie vibe in it, everything up until that last couple minutes of the film, I give it a 3 out of 5. If you haven't seen the film, I'd say watch it if you're a fan of Liam Neeson, but go into it knowing that the ending is BS. If you have seen it, if it's one of those films, it might be one of those films. I don't know if it'd be necessarily one of those films that grow on you at second watch, but it's definitely one of those films that is, you watch it again, you'll probably be like, they could have improved this ending so much. At least that's how I was. If you don't have any inclination to watch the film again, I totally understand where you're coming from with that. Like I said, 3 out of 5, and if you haven't watched it and curious about it because of Liam Neeson, it is on Netflix still.